Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. Today I'm going to be doing a Things Like Goosebumps video. I always forget the title, that's why I stop every time I get ready to do one of these videos. Anyway, Things Like Goosebumps. This is Strange Tales number 9, and I've got it in the Volume 1 book here on my Kindle. And this is a really good issue. I had a lot of fun with this, particularly one story that I think is probably my favorite, but we'll get there in a little bit. This is another great collection of short stories that are sometimes pretty much comics, almost always. There's always one story in the middle of these comics for anybody who hasn't been keeping up with these videos, or this happens to be my first video for you. If you haven't read these before, there's always one written out short story. It's like 2 pages long. And in every single issue, there's always one. But I had a really good time reading this particular issue too this week. It was very fun, very fun. I love Strange Tales. These are so enjoyable. Of course, these were published by Marvel before they became Marvel Comics. They were Atlas Comics at the time. Starting off, and typically these always have about 6 different stories in them. They're about 5 to 6 pages a piece, you know, not very long. Some can be a little bit shorter, but not by much. The first story in here is called Blind Date, and I enjoyed this a lot too. There's basically 2 guys hanging out outside, kind of, sort of, out in the middle of nowhere. Not entirely, but sort of. And they see this beautiful redheaded girl pull up in a convertible, and she's apparently waiting on a blind date, this older man that she hasn't met before. And the main character's kind of this really egotistical, kind of rude guy that just likes to flirt with women. He's basically a womanizer. He immediately comes up and won't stop bugging this girl and kind of wants her to just go off with him and ignore her blind date, even though the blind date could be rich and old, and, you know, she wants that money. She doesn't want the guy, but she wants the money. And the man eventually convinces her to drive off with him, but little did he know what he got himself into. And of course, I don't spoil anything here on the channel, but that was a pretty cool, wild, fun story. I actually really enjoyed that. I think the ending is actually kind of creepy, just the drawing itself, because I think the art's actually really good in here. The art itself, I really dig. I think the art's taken a giant leap in its quality as the issues have gone on that I've reviewed so far. Blind Date is very good. If I had to rate Blind Date on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it about a 4 out of 5. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really cool, fun little short story to read. Immediately after the story, the next story in here is the written out story. This one's called Death Finds a Way. This one is okay. It's not exceptional. It's good, you know, it's decent. Essentially, there's a guy who is a criminal, and he essentially found his way out into the middle of nowhere in a car. And the car breaks down on him, and he gets stuck. And this man shows up, driving a hearse of all things, I believe is what it said. And essentially, this man says that his name is Death. And they start having a conversation about all kinds of stuff, and it gets a little wild, a little weird. This one felt a lot like a Twilight Zone type thing. Like if you took Twilight Zone and made a short story out of it and wrote it out, this is kind of what I think it would be like if it was in Strange Tales. And it was fine. It was for the most part, it's pretty good. Death Finds a Way. If I had to give it if I had to give it on a 5-star rating, if I had to give it a rating at all, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It wasn't great, like I said, but it was good. It was good enough, decent for me. Not that I'm expecting like Oscar bait quality with these. It's just I like quality. I mean, my ratings are typically based on how enjoyable something is and how well done something is, and this was fine for what it was. To be a 2-page story. And of course, like always, in Strange Tales fashion, you get 1 page of the story and then you're interrupted with another story, and then you have to go back and read the rest of the story, which I don't do. I just skip to it and then I go back to the story that I skipped over. Read that too. The story in between the 2 parts of Death Finds a Way is my favorite of the whole book. It's called The Strange Game. Now, the art is not exceptional in this story, in my opinion. Maybe in a couple of places it kind of is. The Strange Game is genius. I mean, it is absolutely a Tales from the Crypt type thing. If you love Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side, this feels so much like that. Essentially, this guy who's fantastic at playing cards of any sort, a lot of people get mad at him. He kind of cheats, honestly. He hasn't lost a game, like, ever. And he sees a bunch of guys at this weird, like, bar type thing playing cards. And for some reason, they're not playing with, like, chips or actual cash or anything like that to represent chips, or chips representing cash or anything like that. Essentially, they're playing with these giant letters. Like, there's, you know, A's and a B and a couple of L's and stuff like that. And they keep kind of making these weird pass hints at this particular guy who joins the game to play cards with him because he's always been good. He starts losing against them. and he loses everything but his his letter H that he has. And the guys, the main character gets so upset that he basically quits, and they keep threatening him and saying, like, hey, you remember, at midnight we always collect, you know? The guy is spooked and he leaves because he feels like they're going to try to, like, break his legs or something, or try to, you know, rob him or anything like that, or come to his house and attack him. Dude, the finale of this story completely blew my mind. I did not expect what it said. I didn't expect what happened at the very end of this, like the last page of the story. It was absolutely genius. I'm not kidding with you. Dude, The Strange Game is one of my favorite stories from Strange Tales now, probably like in my top 5 or 10, I would say. It's absolutely fantastic. If I had to rate The Strange Game on a 5-star basis, it would easily get a 5 out of 5. It's one of the best stories they've done, even if the art isn't amazing. But this is the kind of story at the same time, you didn't need amazing art to do this right. You know, it was fine with the simplistic art that they did. But this was a good story, man. If you haven't read that, you're missing out big time. Especially if you're a big Goosebumps fan. That was a really wild, fun story. The next story in here was okay, too. It's called, let's see, I guess it's just called The Man from Mars. The art's not the greatest, but it's a little bit better than the last story, The Strange Game, that I talked about. Basically, you have this guy who's just a douche, essentially. He's very selfish. He doesn't work. He's an older guy, too. He's not even a 20-something millennial, right? Like, he's like an older, like, probably a 30-year-old man. He lives with his mom, and he basically always takes money from his mom, or asks her for it, and kind of guilt trips her and stuff. Now, at this time, in this day and age when these comics were coming out, $1 was a lot of money, right? So he asked his mom for $1 so he could go to this new movie called The Man from Mars, which, of course, according to this, is more terrifying than Frankenstein, is what it says there. And his mom is like, look, I just gave you $5 yesterday. You know, what did you do with all that? Well, the man starts saying that his mom's trying to lecture him and everything else, and he stomps out of the room and everything. He wants to see the movie. He decides he's going to try to find a way to see the movie by begging for money or something like that along those lines. He comes across a spaceship in the middle of the street. He assumes it's some kind of promotional tool. It actually says on there, you know, to come inside if you want to go to Mars. And the story's ending is okay. It's not my favorite, honestly. It's just decent. It's okay. If I had to rate The Man from Mars on a 5-star basis, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It's okay. I'm kind of rushing through these reviews for these stories. I don't mean to too much, but, you know, I want to kind of just not have to sit around and ramble to you guys about stuff like I typically do. I'm trying to shorten my videos a little bit. I know I've been going to like 15 and 18 minutes and stuff. I don't like that entirely, especially when it's a rambly person like myself, so I'm trying to help you guys out too. Anyway, the next story in here is called Drink Deep Vampire, and the artwork is freaking fantastic. I love the art in this story. It's so good. Essentially, this really creepy gravekeeper guy at a cemetery, you know, kind of a keeper, like upkeeps the land and all that. He happens to witness a vampire murder a man and drink his blood out in the middle of the field. And he kind of follows this guy when he turns into a bat and a police officer attacks him. He follows this guy back to kind of a castle type thing. And apparently there are a bunch of vampires, and he decides that he's going to talk to them about how he wants to help them have blood every single night. Almost like a milkman type thing back in the day, where you'd have the milkman come to your house and leave a bottle of milk. They'd take the old bottle, or bottles if you'd had more, and they leave whatever's new for you, right? He tells them, he kind of proposes this idea that he would love to do that if they paid him as well. And they start giving him all these jewels and this gold and everything, right, while he takes care of them, and the deal's going great. And then there's a twist in the ending that, while I would say it's very creative and very funny in a lot of respects, yeah, funny, not scary, but funny, and the art looks great too here, I would say it's also a little bit on the sillier side. Like, it doesn't really leave a huge impact on you aside from making you kind of laugh. It's kind of like when you're reading the Alvin Schwartz Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books, and you get to the kind of humorous section of the book. To me, it doesn't fit as well as the scary stories. You know, sometimes they do, but not always. They kind of just make you like it doesn't even make you laugh. You just kind of like, you know, like, that was amusing. You know, that's what you kind of do. That's the way the ending of this one is, too. But it's not bad. I don't want you to think that Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark sections are bad that are focused on comedy. It's not that they're bad, it's just, they're okay. You know, that's what it is. That's the way I feel towards this story, too, in the finale, at least. The rest of the story is really good, and like I said, the art is impeccable, frankly. Drink Deep Vampire, if I had to rate this on a 5-star basis, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It's pretty decent. Let's see. The last story in here is called The Voice of Doom. The art style is awful, frankly, in my opinion. It's not just simplistic, it's just ugly. You know, character designs and everything. The Voice of Doom had a really cool concept going for it. I don't really think it pulled through as well as it could have. Essentially, there is a man who is kind of like a J. Jonah Jameson type character. I almost wonder if the way he's dressed and everything, without the mustache and the cigar, I almost wonder if he's like a precursor to Marvel's design of J. Jonah Jameson when Stan Lee would come in to do, you know, Spider-Man and everything else. It's like there's this boss, very mouthy, very rude man, who essentially knows that other employees are spying, or not spying, but like they're kind of plotting against him. They all complain all the time behind the scenes. He has some particular workers in here, like all businesses do, where he makes this particular guy kind of listen in on everybody else's conversations all the time. But he decides that that's probably not reliable. So he decides to install a kind of like a microphone type thing to kind of spy on people in the office and hear what they're saying on the other end when they think the machine is turned off, and that, you know, it's covered up by making it look like it's a thing where he can make announcements over an intercom to people without having to call them into his office all the time. He can just say it out loud over a microphone and all that. But it is also a device where he can hear what other people are saying in the office just to see what they're saying about himself, and if he gets trashed by somebody, he'll just fire them. That's pretty much what he wants to do here. At one point, he starts hearing a voice inside of the box that's in his office that plays the stuff from the other side in the office itself. He starts hearing a voice in there. This particular story is not very good. Whether it be the art style, whether it be the execution of the ending, I was getting into it. I really was. I thought I was really starting to like that story a lot, and it just kind of didn't pull through the way it should have. Kind of lame, honestly. If I had to rate The Voice of Doom on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it maybe a 2 out of 5. It wasn't very strong. Like I said, the art wasn't great either. It was pretty bad, frankly. At least the character designs, like I said, were probably the worst part. But overall, guys, when it comes to Strange Tales issue number 9, again, that one story talked about the strange game was so good that you shouldn't pass this particular issue up. You should read it just to see that particular story. And the other stories are okay for the most part. Like I said, it's mostly just a fine issue, like a good issue in general. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun for the most part. If I had to rate Strange Tales issue number 9 on a 5-star basis, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. That's not a bad rating either. That's just saying this is mostly mediocre, like just kind of decent, just okay. But again, The Strange Game, it's a great story. You should read that. What are your thoughts on Strange Tales issue number 9 if you have read it? Put your thoughts in comments down below. Do you love these comics? Do you like hearing me talk about them? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Anyway, that's another thing like Goosebumps. If you love Goosebumps stuff, you'll probably love this issue or this series in general. Strange Tales is very fun. It's kind of what I think would be the inspiration for things like Goosebumps, like the actual R.L. Stine creation itself. You know, we know a lot of black and white horror movies like Night of the Living Dead are, but this is the kind of thing where these feel like the precursor to those Goosebumps stories that eventually come out. Even though a lot of these stories are focused on more adults than there are kids and children, which I think these comics are kind of aimed more towards younger kids anyway, or at least they were at that time. But your kids can read these too and enjoy them. If you want your kids to kind of get introduction to like horror or anything like that, I think they could read this and have a really good time. I love the Strange Tales comics. I think they're fantastic. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below, guys. Thank you for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today, and goodbye.